Comic Book Chronicles, ladies and gentlemen. And my guests today are the creators of the graphic novel, The Inspectors, Volume 1. That's Spectre as in ghost, spirit. It's from Blue Fox Comics, and the Kickstarter for The Inspectors Volume 2 is currently live. Please welcome David R. Flores and Jarod Hunter Rowe. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well.
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
No, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So The Inspectors, tell us about what it is, who the characters are. Give us a general introduction for the folks who've never heard of it.
Well, the inspectors are I mean, you could say ragtag team of notable characters from history, specifically writers of a certain period that just got into paranormal investigation, or at least mostly stumbled upon it. So it's based on this idea that actually it's a real group. It's called called the Ghost Club back in England, and there were notable. Yeah, Ghost Club. So there was Charles Dickens was a member, Charles Dickens, and like over the years there were other people that were a part of it. Now, Jarod, if I'm not quite remembering the actor's name, but one of the members was a character from a Star Wars movie, the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, and I cannot remember his name. Peter Cushing, that's it. Peter Cushing was a member.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it went for it was like a very long time, and I don't think a lot of people knew about it. And I had read about it, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like there's a bunch of people like where they really got into the occult and they wanted to find out if it was real or not. And then I had that idea, and I proposed it to Jarod, and he really liked it. He's like, oh, that's really cool. And it was really kind of the idea was making it like an adventure story, like just a bunch of people kind of thrown together and needed to solve this mystery. And I think when we were writing it, we always felt like it was kind of like a version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, almost like where it's with that amount, it's like just fun, adventurous, with some thrills and stuff like that. So that was always kind of our intention, and that's kind of how it came about. And
the fact that it was the fact that it was rooted in some kind of reality made it. I mean, we obviously took it and ran with it, but the fact that there was kind of a realistic version of the thing we built out was cool. And we thought, we hadn't seen that before. We'd seen mashups that felt a little more random, but the fact that it was based on something that kind of had some reality to it was intriguing.
Now, did you guys? I mean, I assume you guys knew each other beforehand. I mean, had you collaborated before? What was the dynamic like there between the two of you?
Our our origin story, I guess, is that we worked together for years, and Dave and I are both screenwriters in LA, and we always wrote separately, and we would always share each other's scripts, and always talk about how cool it would be to work together someday, and we never did. And when Dave started doing comics, that was when the idea sparked that we should do something together, because we'd written a million scripts that were just PDFs on our computer that never went anywhere. And the idea of kind of creating something out of that we could do on our own, because Dave is an artist and an illustrator, was intriguing. So it seemed like the perfect time to start working together. And there were some bumps along the road, like any two writers getting together with separate ideas would be, but we worked it out.
I can imagine. So okay, so you've got our characters here, our Guardians of the Galaxy, our misfit team, so to speak. We've got Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, correct, who is the famously the author of Sherlock Holmes, the Sherlock Holmes books. And then you've got Harry Houdini, and then you've got Bram Stoker, who is the famous author of Dracula, and then you have a young Agatha Christie in there. Am I right? Have I got everybody?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's Charles Dickens makes an appearance, and there's another well-known person in the story that you have to find out. Like, you have to read it. It's kind of a big reveal. So
You keep talking about
that's
Robert Louis Stevenson, but you kind of have to read it to
right.
how
Yeah.
that pays off. Yeah.
And kind of how that came about was like, because we knew Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle was a member of the Ghost Club, and we were thinking, well, he's kind of the heart and soul of the story. Who were his contemporaries at the time? And we knew that Houdini was friends with him, and strangely enough, it was Doyle who was really into the occult, less so Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was
Really?
interested. Well, he was interested, but I think he was more of the skeptic in reality.
Okay.
And whereas Arthur Conan Doyle was a little more of the believer. So we did a little twist there, just because, for the sake of the story. And like, other people, like, well, who was a contemporary at the time? And Bram Stoker was. And we discovered that he's kind of a distant cousin of Arthur Conan Doyle. And Agatha Christie was right around that time, was around 10 years old. So that'd be kind of interesting, because she was a mystery writer as well.
Yeah.
So we just found a collection of people, and like, how could we fit them all together? And that's how it came about with the group.
And our killer character, our antagonist, our enemy, is Spring-Heeled Jack.
Yes.
Now, I did not know this until a matter of hours ago.
Oh,
But
really?
Spring-Heeled Jack is an actual part of Victorian folklore, is it not?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Jarod
What's that legend like? What is that?
So so we were looking for like a nemesis, like a spirit that might have been something that they would be pursuing. And Jarod had discovered Spring-Heeled Jack, because I didn't know anything about Spring-Heeled Jack. So a lot of times when you do, you start these stories based on real people, you start doing research, and things sort of connect. You're like, oh, this is something that we could use.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jarod. Yeah, that was kind of like, you found this character.
No, it had a couple great qualities. It had the fact that the name's just cool. We like the name. It played into the story, because the whole idea is it a phantom, or is it just a human, like, masquerading, terrorizing people, Jack the Ripper style? And so that question is kind of the main question of our story. The idea of Doyle wondering, okay, it's got to be a human. It's obviously a human, but maybe it's not. And what does that mean if it's not? Like, does that change my whole belief system and all that? So the actual Spring-Heeled Jack legend played into that really nicely. And I also liked the fact that the whole city already knew who Spring-Heeled Jack was, because it was an urban legend from years and years and years. So we have, so there's kind of a built-in knowledge amongst the characters already when this happened.
Yeah.
And so, there's maybe a little bit of catch up for the audience, but for the characters, they're just right in it. They're like, oh, this happened. What does this mean? And we go from there.
You didn't have to do any legwork in that regard.
Right.
From a story perspective.
Right. The characters didn't have to have a conversation. Who's Spring-Heeled Jack? What's this? Like, they knew. And plus it just seemed cool to draw. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. It looks amazing. I mean, now, so what other stories kind of inspired the Inspectors? Because I think I made the comment when I reviewed the first volume that I thought it was a Sherlock Holmes story meets Ghostbusters meets The Expendables, which you kind of, I guess you have to read it to get it. But
that was our favorite comment.
Yeah, we really love that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, there you go. Well, did you guys like other comics, TV shows, novels? I mean, what inspired the Inspectors then?
I think we touched on, well, previously I touched on the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's kind of the League of the Extraordinary. And in that vein, we could have taken it in different directions, but Jarod and I always felt like it was sort of an adventure, mystery, thriller. So, and this might actually explain where we were going with this. Initially, we wrote it as a screenplay. So what we did was, I was working on another project, and when I pitched the idea to Jarod, what we thought was like, hey, let's write this as a screenplay and then adapt the screenplay into a graphic novel. So we kind
Okay.
of, yeah, so we had the cart before the horse, in a
Yeah.
sense. And then, so then when we took the screenplay, we kind of pared it down. Jarod went through and pared it down, and I illustrated it. And so, but when we were writing it, it was always with, hey, let's make this fun. Let's make this exciting. Let's really kind of flesh out the characters and think of it as a movie. Like we're making a movie, but, and because it's it's a period piece and it's got a lot of effects, it's like, okay, well, we're kind of doing our own movie, only we're doing it in a graphic novel form.
Yeah, I
so
think when we started it, you know, I love kind of, you know, Victorian and like I like things that are fun, and you know, I think of everything in the terms of a movie, like watchable but readable would be. And so like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie, you know, when we started doing this was like peak MCU. So it
Okay.
was, you know, that we weren't trying to imitate that, but it was definitely rattling around in our mind. And I think between the two of us, like I have maybe a lighter sense, and so things just kind of develop that way. Dave's got a sense of humor too, but it's a little darker.
the darker of the two.
Yeah.
When it comes to subjects.
So you guys had never done the comic book thing before. You'd never done a graphic novel together. Am I right about that?
Yeah, not together. I'd done one called Dead Future King. And I'd
Dead
started
Future
doing
King.
that. Yeah, Dead Future King. And I did about 5 issues of it. And then there's a book that's out called Dead Future King, a collected edition. But then like what happened was I pitched the idea to Jarod, and I was so like excited about it, and he was so excited about it that I stepped off Dead Future King to do this. And with little did I know that, you know, it would take us down a different path. So whether or not I'll revisit Dead Future King, I hope so, maybe it's sometime in the future. But like that was my experience doing graphic novels. So then, you know, brought Jarod into kind of this world, because for me, I always grew up, like when I was young, I was like a huge comic fan, like, and it really more the artists like John Byrne, John Schema, you know, like, so all these, I just loved that kind of world, mostly the superhero. But then as I got older, I got more into independent stuff. And so that maybe that's what happens. It's kind of the natural progression. And then, and then that's how Jarod and I got together to do this.
So what was that collaborative process like? I mean, was that an easy process? I mean, because you guys both have screenwriting backgrounds, but David, you're an illustrator. I mean, is that the tumultuous start, but then you get into a groove? What was that? What was that
Great
collaborative
question.
process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Jarod, maybe you could elaborate on that one.
The very first draft was tough, I'd say. And the reason is because how Dave and I decided to work was when we would talk to each other and we'd talk about the story, we'd have these ideas, and when the person's just pitching it to the other person, sometimes we'd say like, I don't see that. That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And the other person would say, well, just let me write it down and you can read it. And we kind of both just wanted to get our idea out.
Yeah.
Before it got shot down. So our writing process, how we started doing it was, one of us would do an initial draft after we'd already agreed on a template, an outline, and we'd each do an initial draft and just look at it as a whole, and then kind of rewrite each other. So we essentially just rewrite each other constantly. And so
you play off each other in that sense.
Yeah. And so that sometimes I remember for the very first draft of Inspectors, I gave it to Dave and it came back, and I'd say about 60% of it was changed. And and my ego, my ego was like, what is, I gave you gold. What are you doing? But you know, that just became how we worked, because then Dave would give me this new draft. We'd discuss it, because there would obviously be things I wasn't responding to in what he did. And then kind of how we would take our disagreements with each version, like, and narrow it down and down and down until we were both good with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
You met in the middle.
And the other thing is we knew each other for years, and we shared each other's scripts, and we relied on each other for good notes on our own separate projects. So
Right.
having that respect for his opinion and him having respect for my opinion, I think was a big way to kind of ease those tensions, because if I think something's great, but Dave really isn't responding to it, I have to
Right.
respect that maybe there's something about that maybe I'm wrong, or maybe
There's
it's just a
validity to
matter
that.
of tweaking it, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think like it really boiled down to is like we respected each other, and I think we found a groove that worked. Like we would break the story down. And then a lot of times if I suggested an idea and Jarod just wasn't into it, and he would suggest like he would like kind of counter with a different idea. And I
Yeah.
wasn't quite into it. We'd actually would end up finding a third idea that was like better than both those ideas. And
Okay.
that's kind of like how we always think of it, is like if this is not working and it's not working for me, it's not working for you, there's a third option out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it just really did work out, and it would open the story to more possibilities, which is that's kind of the exciting part. It's treacherous, but it's also exciting because you
I'll believe
discover
it.
something that's just like, wow, this is it. I feel like this is gonna work, and he agrees, and yeah, that's been our process. And it took a bit, but like I feel like he and I complement each other in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So it's a good marriage, so to speak.
So, and on the subject of the creative process, I mean, your main characters in this book, I would say, are real people. Well, they were real people. I mean, these are actual writers, in one case, a magician, historical figures. So, from a writing perspective, how do you put yourselves in the shoes of these real people? I mean, is that a daunting process? Is that do we just sort of come to grips with the fact that these are fictionalized versions of these people? How does that work?
I think it's go ahead, yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say for the most part, we just come to grips with the fact that it's a fictionalized version of real people. I think
Okay.
what we try not to do is take anything that is true and kind of distort that. So, Doyle did have
Blatantly
a wife.
disregard the truth.
Yeah. So like Arthur Conan Doyle, he was best friends with Harry Houdini, or very good friends with Harry Houdini. Um, Arthur Conan Doyle also had a wife that was sick, which was one of the things that, obviously is the catalyst for kind of what he's going through. And
Right.
so we kind of took those true elements and tried to stay true to those to a certain extent. But then after that they were just kind of a template, and we just ran with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Okay.
me, as I kind of looked at the characters, I like if Arthur Conan Doyle, nothing against how he looked, but he didn't kind of have that matinee idol quality as far as his appearance.
Mhm.
So as I was drawing it, I was thinking about like, oh, if an actor were playing Arthur Conan Doyle, this is kind of who the actor would look like. So
Okay.
in my mind, thinking that way, it's like, okay, so we have creative license. We're not really sticking to who these people were. It's almost like the idea of who these people were. And
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about, like in a movie sense or in a graphic
Yeah.
novel sense. And that really kind of freed it up, for at least for me, like thinking, hey, we don't really have to stick to this. Oh, Arthur Conan Doyle looked like this and he drove this, and it was more of the idea
Yeah.
of what they represented.
I think where we went with the actual plot of the story too helped with that, because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it
Right.
it gets a little crazier in volume 2. So yeah, the fact that we kind of went bigger with the story helped us kind of look at the reality of who these characters were and say like, okay, we don't necessarily have to stick to the rigid
Yeah.
rules of their biographies,
Okay, fair enough. David, did you have a favorite moment or page or scene in the story to draw? Anything that sticks out in that sense?
You know what? There's like two images, and they're in the first book, first chapter. And I think for me, my
Okay.
favorite is, it's a really simple scene, but it's the one where young Arthur Conan Doyle is going into the forest, and then you see above him it says the inspectors.
That's a
There's
great
something.
page.
Thank you. There's something very simple about it, yet evocative. And so when the end result, like a lot of times you have these ideas of how you think it's going to look, and sometimes you achieve it, sometimes you don't. But with that one, I felt like, wow, that really kind of captured the feeling of the book and for me. And I'd say a close second would be the last page of chapter 1, where Spring Hill Jack is leaping, and then you have the stained glass window, and that one was draw. I really enjoyed that one too.
Epic. So, okay, switching back to Doyle here, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, how important is his skeptical nature to the story itself? I mean, in many ways, I would say it's kind of the central part of the story, is it not?
Yeah, it's very important. It's in a way, everything else is the plot, but his skepticism is the story that we're really telling. It's, because as Dave mentioned, he's kind of a well-known believer, and and so his journey, not to again give anything away, but his journey of kind of skeptic to who he became is what the story is about, and how he got there. So that's central. That's central. And
yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and it's rooted in sort of his personal journey with his relationship with his wife, who's sick, and so there's that deeper quality to it, where it's like more so than just he wants to see if there's life after death. It's for personal reasons. So I think, and like what Jarod said, it really does drive the story. That's the central through line of, is it real? Is it not? Can we believe that there's a life after death? So I think that is, for us, that was always our touchstone when we were going through. It's like, that's the thing that the story's about. It's fun. It's got a lot of adventure, but at the end of the story, it's almost like what Jarod said. It's kind of like, in order for him to be a believer, we have to start off as him being a skeptic and almost doubting it, not even believing that that's even a possibility.
Excellent. Okay, so we mentioned that the second volume, it's in the Kickstarter phase as we speak, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what can we kind of expect from volume 2 that you can tell us?
Well, the snowball is rolling downhill at this point. The volume 1 was a lot of the mystery, and volume 2 is a lot of the payoff. So I think it's a little faster paced in that respect. And all the questions that we had our characters ask in volume 1 are answered in volume 2. So yeah, I think it's fast paced, adventure, fun. I don't know, Dave.
Yeah, no, I think you surmised it perfectly. I mean, it really is. It does pick up the excitement. It gets bigger, and some pretty big reveals. And I feel like it's a fitting conclusion to the first volume, because when we did it, we saw it as one complete book. So we had the entire plot, the whole story was built, and then we broke it into 2 volumes. So when you start reading volume 2, there is a connection. There's really no like, oh, okay, this feels a little disjointed. It's one complete story, so it will conclude everything that happened in the first volume.
That's true. Don't just pick up volume 2. If you do, you'll be very
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I love the book. I think it's fantastic. I think you guys really accomplished something great here. Is there anything else that you would like to add for the time being?
Just, I mean, if you haven't read it and it sounds like something that might interest you, I would just encourage people to pick it up. We obviously poured a lot of heart and soul into it over a long period of time, and yeah, we'd appreciate the support if people are willing to give it.
Yeah, very. Yeah, I mean, I think I second what Jarod said. We really spent a long time on this, and we put a lot of work into it, and we're very proud of it. And I think what happened during the course of it really cemented Jarod and I's like our quest to continue writing stories together. And we have another thing that we're working on that eventually we're close to being finished with as well. So
Okay. Okay.
eventually, I mean,
We're not just a one-off. We've got more stuff.
yeah, we have more stuff. We have more stories that we've written together. Because like Jarod said, we were kind of done a bunch of screenplays, and there's one that we're going to be working on after this project too. So we have stuff down the line, and so we're really excited about that. It's been a great experience, and getting to meet awesome different people. Got to meet you, Rob. Thank you for having us on here. This has been great.
No. Now, where can we get the book? Can we get it from Blue Fox Comics? Can we get it from the Kickstarter? Where can we purchase the Inspectors Volume 1?
Well, yes, you can get it online at Blue Fox Comics. You can get it on Amazon. You can also get it through your local comic shop. It was in Diamond, so if you just call and ask, they should be able to find it. Any other places, Dave?
I mean, really, if you Google the book, the name, I mean, there's a ton of places that kind of pop up, which is great. I mean, so it is easy to find, which has been very helpful. I know, like, for instance, we live in LA, so we did a book signing at Golden Apple. It's available there. So if you're in LA, drop by Golden Apple, check it out. It's they've been very supportive, and we really appreciate everybody helping us and really being into the story and into the project. So, but that's definitely one way to get it.
Excellent. The book is The Inspectors Volume 1. Coming soon, it's The Inspectors Volume 2. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Enjoy your reviews.